Well, back to Ottawa now and the continuing fallout from the NSICOP report. The Committee of Parliamentarians saying Canada's intelligence agencies know of members in the House of Commons who helped foreign interference to happen. Now, the opposition has been pushing the government to release the names of these MPs, but the Trudeau cabinet continues to resist.
Do you think Canadians have the right to know when they go to cast an X next to the name of somebody in the next 15 months, the very thing that we're dealing with here in Bill C-70, do you think they have the right to know whether their member is under the influence of a hostile foreign state? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, I think Canadians know, and I'm confident that they have every reason to be reassured that our intelligence agencies and the RCMP take their responsibilities extraordinarily seriously, have the resources necessary to investigate, and should the RCMP, for example, in their wisdom decide that charges should be laid in consultation with the appropriate prosecutors, that's our system in a rule of law democracy. It's not simply releasing a series of names or doing, as Mr. Caputo says he's concerned about, casting aspersions himself on everybody by pretending that there's some perfect list of names that the government's not releasing.
Well, let's bring in our political panel for this week to talk about the issue. Stevie O'Brien is a former Chief of Staff to Liberal ministers, now with Macmillan Vantage. Cole Hogan is a former Conservative digital strategist, now with Earnscliffe Strategies. And Anne McGrath, the Principal Secretary to the NDP leader. Hello to the three of you.
Hello. Hi.
So, Cole, I know you're the new one to the panel, but I'm going to put you on the spot first and foremost. Why is it so important for Conservatives to have the government release a list of names? What are the arguments that you're hearing?
I think the Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, Michael Chong, are arguing that sunshine is the best disinfectant. Let's get all the names out there in terms of, who's accepting disguised funding, who's accepting, rumors of organization for campaigns. So let's get those names out in the open, see who is doing what, lobbied by whom, and get to the bottom of it. Okay, get to the bottom of it. And, Stevie, as we saw there from Dominic LeBlanc, the government is not releasing names for various arguments. But I wonder if this risks creating an impression of the Liberal government of trying to cover up for fellow Liberals.
Well, that's definitely what the Conservatives are trying to suggest. But I think what Minister LeBlanc and the government is doing is the responsible course of action. Intelligence is not evidence. The way the intelligence community works, they take lots of different pieces, try to create a composite image, and that's what CSIS has and the RCMP have, and they are going to, if appropriate, lay charges where that evidence, when there is enough sort of intelligence to indicate that that's appropriate. Taking one piece of intelligence out of context could destroy careers, could be extremely misleading and enhance toxicity without solving the problem. I agree with Cole that sunshine is a great disinfectant, which is why the government's introduced the new foreign influence registry, and that's working its way through government, and we will see who's paying to influence whom.
Yeah, paying for access, as you say. And when you look at this debate taking place, where does your party stand on whether or not names need to be shared?
Well, I think that so this is a committee, this committee that produced this report that has members from all parties and senators. So I would imagine that they had enough to go on to actually put some names in there. They've been redacted out, but they had enough to be able to do that. So I do think that I'm hoping that the Liberals would be looking for some way to have it not just be something that you wait on. Those are pretty shocking revelations. I was really shocked to hear, I understand a little bit if, you're an unwitting participant, but if they had enough to go on to say that there were some witting participants in foreign interference in our electoral process, I think it's really important to figure out who those people are, and probably, if I agree with the Minister LeBlanc that there need to be charges laid in those instances, but if it goes on very long, I think that's a real problem for the government. But I also think that the Conservatives are saying that they want to see the names, but that's a hard claim to make when their leader is refusing to see the names. So you can't say both things. You can't say we want to see the names, but we refuse to actually have our leader go and see the names.
Yeah. Cole, does that create a problem for the Conservative leader? Because he wants the freedom to say what he wants to say, has refused to actually sign the documents to allow him to see these types of reports.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think Michael Chong and others have had the same explanation, is that, well, if he is briefed in, like the NSICOP committee, he can then no longer say anything about the issue at hand. So I think regardless of whether or not he's briefed into that regard or read in, I think that Canadians still expect there to be some sort of, stopgap for the next election. So going into the next general, we're aware of, what countries are trying to influence our electoral system, who's trying to do what and to what end.
Okay. And is there a way to get at the names without this becoming some type of witch hunt? Because I appreciate that the government's making the argument that's trying to walk a line, but is there a way to make people to get the interested parties happy and satisfied without compromising anything?
I think there's more of that atmosphere right now because everybody's looking. I mean, I can't imagine looking around at your fellow parliamentarians and kind of wondering about it. And I think that there's real dangers in that because people will make assumptions based on all sorts of things about who they think that it is. So I really believe that we're going to, this needs to proceed rapidly to some kind of a conclusion. Otherwise, the atmosphere is just really, it was toxic to begin with, even more toxic now.
Yeah, Stevie, and I want to get back to the point, though, about the optics of this for the government, because, of course, it took a really big hitting when the stories of foreign interference kind of came out. In this same NSICOP report, they basically say the government has failed to take it seriously. Can they afford to drag their feet on this?
I think the report was written in perhaps a less than responsible manner, knowing that sort of blunt analysis coming out on limited intelligence. It's creating, as we're sort of discussing here, this environment where people are looking over their shoulder and looking to see, is it my neighbor? Who is it? And knowing that, and the committee would have known at the time that there was a limit to how much could come out. So they sort of are adding to and feeding that environment. I think we need to make sure that the RCMP, that CSIS have all of the information that they need, that we give them the space and the tools and the resources to do the work that they need to do. And then I think from a political perspective, it might help if the government stopped, launching all of these reviews into itself and letting sort of the other bodies do their work.
Okay, so is it you don't agree with doing an internal review?
I think internal review is good. I think there have been a ton of things that we're going forward and doing reviews on. And in this case, I'd like to hand it over to the RCMP and CSIS to sort of take it from here. Mm-hmm.
How should individual parties be responding to this? Because there is this, without having a list of names, you are almost looking over your shoulder to see and to speculate, is it this person, is it this person? How should parties be responding to this, at least in their own backyard, Cole?
Well, I imagine that, it's causing a little bit of discomfort in some caucus rooms across all of the parties, but I think there is, particularly in the case of nomination races or just in general elections, let's have a bit more stopgaps. And I think the foreign entity registry, the terminology of it exactly escapes me, but having that ready for the next election where it's like, all right, here are foreign entities trying to influence, whether it's a constituency, organization, a nomination race, a general election, a by-election, whatever it might be, having some recourse there to identify these people in advance would be great before the next election. I think that happens within the party process to start first.
Mm-hmm. And how should parties be responding?
Well, I just want to take issue a little bit with this idea that getting the top security clearance and reviewing the documents stops you from speaking about foreign interference. I mean, clearly, Jagmeet Singh got that clearance, has seen documents. It has absolutely not stopped him from speaking out. He was actually one of the first ones to call for the public inquiry and was very instrumental in making sure that we got to the point of having the public inquiry. So I don't think that getting that clearance stops you from actually speaking about foreign interference. It stops you from saying certain things, which I think is probably fair enough. So I think that what parties need to do is, as we've been saying from the very beginning, is make sure that the public inquiry has the resources it needs to do the work, clear this up. I agree with get the security agencies to actually lay charges if charges are warranted in some cases, and get as much information out as possible. I think people need to know that they can trust the integrity of our electoral process.
Okay. So, of course, we'll watch this as it goes on. But I do also want to talk about the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giroux, because he did appear before committee this week, talked once again about his analysis of the government's carbon tax. And his analysis of it essentially says the vast majority of households will be paying more for this tax than they get back. That is opposite to the argument that we're hearing from the government. How bad is this for the government's carbon tax regime if the PBO is very confident to the committee, saying that, at the end of the day, my numbers are going to bear out?
Well, he's already created 2 incorrect reports based on analysis. So I take it with a grain of salt, or I think it's actually irresponsible for him to be predicting the outcome of his 3rd attempt at this without having crunched the numbers, because even when he was crunching the numbers, he was wrong. So I think it's been a problem for the government that they had to be fighting with the PBO and defending their numbers to date. I think it's a little bit of a win for them to say, look, no, when he was criticizing us, he was doing it with false on a false report.
Okay, and Cole, what do you say to that?
I think that there's an issue of transparency in both of the issues we're talking about today, because I think that there is also a problem with the PBO's dual reports. Apparently there's another report that they weren't allowed to disclose, or the PBO was encouraged to not do so, to not release information. The Deputy Environment Minister said this as well. So there's on both the issue of foreign interference and the PBO's report, there's 2 issues of transparency where we're not seeing what's what from the federal government.
Okay, Anne, what do you make of this discrepancy?
Well, this is a very muddy and confusing story all the way along. It's actually hard to follow, and I think that it speaks to a bit of conflict, obviously, between the Parliamentary Budget Officer and the government. But at the heart of it is, I think, is what we want to do about climate change, how we want to deal with carbon pricing and those kinds of things. And I think the problem in this is that it's not about this report or that report, but the fact is that the government actually undermined the entire climate policy themselves when they did the carve-out for heating fuels that was very obviously designed to appease the Atlantic members of Parliament in their caucus.
So how does it affect an upcoming election, though? Because, if all goes to plan, we're looking at a vote October of next year, not this year, but of next year. We already know that the Conservative leader wants to make this next election essentially a referendum on the carbon tax. He wants to kill the carbon tax. How does this type of discrepancy work against the government and any potential changes to the tax itself and the regime?
Well, I think the Conservatives are being loud and squawking on this because it is the fact that he was making the report that he was referencing is no longer supporting their argument. Is they're trying to make hay about this secret report and trying to make it sound like there's a lack of transparency, where in fact what a terrible plan to hide documents by giving them to a third-party costing officer to base his analysis on. That's not really how secrets go. There is no secret second report. What he's talking about, what he's referring to, are regular standard data sets, perhaps private, raw data that are regularly sent to the PBO by Environment and other departments. And there are really strong reasons why that can't be released publicly. Third-party confidential business information and other privacy concerns. And I would say that they will be released in the same way that any access to information request is released, but it wouldn't be appropriate. There's no some secret separate report that is being withheld.
Cole, how does it affect the next vote?
Sure. I think the next federal election will hinge a lot on the carbon tax, and it'll be a big part of the conversation. It's a signature legacy piece for the Liberals that keeps taking hits in terms of its credibility. So as we move towards the election, you see Pierre frame things in terms of, I'd like to offer you, a summer holiday from the carbon tax, talking about, if you just had the tax removed from the excise tax and the GST, and you could save this much over the summer, and here's the Liberal government costing you while we, the Conservatives, are trying to save you money. This plays to the affordability message time after time again, and as we go into the election, the carbon tax will still be unpopular across the land, and I think the fate of the Liberals will kind of hinge on it.
Okay, Anne, what do you think?
I think it's really hard to predict this far in advance what the actual election issue, ballot issue is going to be, and no political party actually really gets to decide that. Voters decide what the issue is. And right now, I would say that carbon pricing is a piece of that, but I think that issues of affordability generally are the big thing right now. And I think that the biggest ones, in my view, are not the carbon pricing, although I do believe that we need to have a coherent carbon pricing plan. The biggest issues are around housing and groceries.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. And thank you, Stevie and Cole. Very nice to meet you. Thank you for being part of the program. We'll see you all again soon.